Welcome to the Feria TechCast, where we bring you all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. I'm your host, Ezekiel Iferia, and today we are joined by Rachel Vancelette. Rachel is a contemporary art and fashion curator, entrepreneur, and the founder of Intro Expert, a technology platform designed to connect and empower artists and creative professionals. With over 2 decades at the intersection of arts, fashion, and innovation, she has been a contributor to Vogue Italia and has produced global projects that blends creativity with technological advancement, focusing on the tangible well-being benefits of art and the importance of protecting human creativity in the age of AI. In this episode, we'll explore her systematic approach to building creative communities through technology and how she bridges the worlds of high art, fashion, and digital innovation. So, Rachel, it's truly a pleasure to welcome you to the Iferia TechCast. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be invited. So thank you.
Great to have you here. So, let's dive in. Rachel, you've built a career at the fascinating crossroad of contemporary art, fashion, and technology. So, for someone who might see these as separate worlds, so how did you first realize they were all part of the same conversation?
Well, I think it's been an interesting journey. I mean, early in my career, I was working with artists that were doing a lot of film and a lot of like technology type components to their work. The beauty of working for a gallerist who had initially supported video art very early. Von Lambert had me as senior director. So we were trying to navigate kind of that technology component very early on. I mean, way back when Apple was doing their Apple TVs and the connective kind of ideas of how you launch and you acquire artwork. Barbara London, who was a very big curator at the MoMA, was also very active in the technology component of how do you acquire this work into a museum and the technology components and then have them last the lifetime, into the next 20 to 50 years. Technology was getting antiquated every year since the early 2000s. So I found it to be there's a huge crossover that was happening with all the artists that I was working with of us navigating, how technology can either help us. This is pre, Instagram. This is early days of Facebook, like Facebook was still kind of relevant, Twitter, but like how do you kind of move these conversations into a larger, broader audience? So for me, it was very exciting. I've always been from very early on, a tech, I was on computers very young and wanted to be kind of a programmer and ended up going a different direction. So for me it's always been in the background of everything I do and I just enjoy it. So I think it's a crucial component to how creatives are navigating now, and I hope to bring the bridge of both the traditional art to and technology component together because they're all intertwining now.
All right, that's indeed fascinating. So, Rachel, let's talk about Intro Expert. So, it's a platform born from your Art X Puzzles initiative during the pandemic. So, what was the core problem you were trying to solve for artists, and how did you start designing the solution?
Well, I came up with the idea 10 years before, actually. I wanted to
Okay.
create a community on the I wanted to create some sort of community for people to meet up for coffees, or, how can we create an environment where people could interactively find galleries, find a map of a gallery, be able to get together. And so I created the idea 10 years before, and I went to a few companies and they kind of laughed at me because the technology wasn't there. I was kind of like forwardly thinking. And I had been developing software for the company that I was working for at the time to let people walk through the gallery and watch videos and talk to, hear from the artists. And so flash forward to, 10 years later, during the pandemic, because of my career, a lot of artists were calling me saying, "What are we gonna do? Like, I don't have a gallery. I don't have, my gallery's not calling me back. Museum shows are canceling." And so I launched this idea, that I woke up one morning and said, I want to do this, which was launching an edition, private editions, limited editions of artist puzzles. So we launched 180 artists we ran it for about 3 years, from the beginning of the pandemic to the end. That could give a branch of money to charity as well as to the artist studio to sell these editions. And after that, we had it for 3 years, and we were really relying on Instagram and social following because everybody was on their phones. But when people started going away from their phones again, it was like, what are we going to do? And when the project closed, there was a calling for all these artists that kept calling me saying, can we just do something? And I was like, oh, well, I had this original idea. So let's try to put it together. So therefore, I built Intro Expert, which is really meant to be a network of creatives from 40 different categories. And we opened it up so that it could be for 40 different categories, meaning a chef, a creative artist, a musician, a podcaster, people who really have voices in the world that are talking about creative things that impact humanity. So for me, it was really important to build the project. So yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's really interesting, Rachel. Building a platform that connects creators is a huge technical and social challenge. So, what did your early beta tests look like? Were there any assumptions you had about how artists would use technology that turned out to be completely wrong?
Yeah, well, it was interesting because we came out of the pandemic and people were exhausted. So, people were kind of, wanting to go back into real life situations. So, what we learned in the beginning when we built the project and we built the tech, we wanted it to be user friendly. It's a two-faced sided company where in which, artists can be booked for their time, but also there's an network of artists being able to communicate on a platform among each other to create other collaborations or create business. And what we found was a lot of tech exhaustion. So I learned a lot through that process with the team about user engagement, how you make it user friendly, all these kind of things because we have so many platforms we go on. We go on Instagram, we go on, all these social media platforms. We're kind of overloaded. And so what ended up happening was, I almost was like, we're not doing this anymore because this is not going to work. What's happened? And when we decided to launch the company in February, I was really wonderfully granted a billboard in Times Square by the Times Square Alliance to put these creatives on the board. And so what we did was we put 30 creatives and just honored them in Times Square next to Beyonce, next to David Beckham, next to all the major things. But what happened was a spontaneous community of people who started really saying, we want to do more things. We want to do events in person. We want to be connected through technology, but how can we rewrite the script? And so it just kind of kept moving. And after that, I thought, oh, I'm exhausted again, as we do with build these tech companies, like how do you integrate this into a community that feels authentic? What we ended up coming up with, which was a group in my advisory group, which is a group of different creatives, we decided to do another project and do another billboard. So I asked Times Square and we went out and we came up with a concept called Look Up. And it was really a media message to empower other people. And we ended up doing it on Thanksgiving Day. And we had 40 creatives give a 1-minute video of what Look Up meant to them. And it became a power beacon. I mean, it was really exciting to watch how we built this billboard that has QR codes and way people can integrate and watch these videos and create this interactive environment where people are meeting the people in Times Square, but they're looking at them on the board. And we had Tupac Shakur up there that was done by Michelle Haiti before he passed, and we had him looking up and people are yelling Tupac. I mean, it was just this beautiful moment of like humanity and people coming together. And so when we think about tech is great. The infrastructure of tech is great. But in order to integrate it with humans that want to interact with it, it's a whole nother thing. So it's a constant learning curve, I think, in technology when you think about how it benefits us, but also can push us away. And so now we had 3 open air gallery billboards that went out to millions of people, and we're hoping to travel that now. And InterExpert is kind of the backbone of that, and it will be all of the creatives that are behind this touring kind of thing that's happening now, which is a message beyond, our original, you know, our original position, we want to make sure that creatives are protected and they're able to earn money for their time and create environments where they're able to be initiated into things that are really exciting and collaborate together. So it's working. So yeah.
Rachel, you're passionate about the science behind art and well-being. So, for our audience of builders and problem solvers, what's the most compelling piece of evidence you've seen that engaging with art is not just a luxury, but a genuine tool for mental health?
Well, through my own personal experience, I have experienced it. For me, human engagement, community, and art have become a really component of some of my own journey of going through, tough times in my life and going back to art. I have seen it, and the evidence of it when you think about whether it's a verbal message or a visual message. There are studies that they've done that says dopamine, it's like you get a hit of dopamine when you do visit an art gallery or you spend time with art. And I feel it's the same way in certain kind of digital media as well. I mean, we go to cinema for reasons, to raise our emotions, to make us kind of go outside of ourselves. And so as you see the wellness communities that we have, part of our Interexpert, we also have wellness experts or professionals, one being Helene Beck, who runs a beautiful podcast called Coming from the Heart and discusses kind of, how we all interact with different things in our lives and how that creates wellness in our own life. So I do think we're in a point and a junction where and going back to technology, because that's what we're kind of talking about today, is people being kind of tech exhausted. I mean, we see people going off of social media. We see things happening where the studies are saying that dating apps are like, going backwards because people want to meet in person. They don't want to have just this algorithm anymore. So for me, I feel like the algorithm is also human. So I think humans hopefully will dictate more what happens with our technology and that we're not just kind of on the algorithm all the time. And I think art has the capacity to do that because it slows you down. I mean, you take a minute, and you take a minute with it. I think what I've seen through a lot of these creatives is it takes a moment and people want it in person. They'll experience it on a screen as well. But I think we're moving into a really interesting time where we're able to blend different medias and then bring people to physical experience and then altered 3D experiences and to different areas. We have people working on all different kinds of tech, and I think it's the imagination is worldwide, but I mean, I think at the same time, the human touch point is also very important to remember, So for me, creatives remind me of that, because they're working in their studios all the time saying, sometimes they're anti-tech and then sometimes they're pro-tech. So it's an interesting world.
Mm, all right. So, Rachel, in a world where AI can now generate images, music, and text. So you talk about protecting human creativity. From your vantage point, what's the unique spark that technology cannot replicate? And how do we design systems to nurture it?
Well, I do believe the human mind is more powerful than a computer. I know some people would go against that theory, but I do think we have the capacity, as much as AI gives us all of this data and all this information. I feel like as humans, we are the ultimate creators. So I don't think we'll ever get away from that. I do think there is like this generative idea that's happening with AI that can either benefit or can also harm if it's taking something from someone's creative technique and regenerating it. But I also think it will differentiate us because I think as humans, we can authenticate our own work. And I think there'll have to be tools in place that will authenticate. As example, I don't know, I'm a painter and, I decided to use AI to build something on the painting or something. And I used a couple different generative tools to kind of help me out or something. Like you can put that in a provenance to say, I use these tools for future generations to understand that it's not fully generated by AI, that there's a human imprint. And I think, it's happening in music. The more you hear about how musicians are protecting their own creative right, but they're also getting pieces and parts from different things to rewrite things. I think it's becomes more about provenance and documentation. So.
All right, a really very insightful response there, Rachel. So, your work involves advising collectors and building markets. So, how has technology, like from blockchain to social media, fundamentally changed the supply chain of how art is discovered, valued, and owned?
Well, I will say, the auction houses have, used fundamentally different ways and they've sold NFTs. I mean, we have Beeple who sold for $69 million a number of years ago. And Beeple was just down in Art Basel, which I was there last week. And, he's generating NFTs and prints and creating, a generative idea of these items. And again, they become valued and traded you know, on the blockchain. So, I mean, that still exists. I mean, it didn't go away. There's still collectors that are engaging in that kind of activity, but that's just only one area of it. When we really think about provenance and certain ways of thinking about artwork and database keeping for historical reasons and also just for authentication, I think technology's really played a huge role in helping different people be able to authenticate, to also evaluate and also to kind of record. So I think these are important things as we have forgery and to authenticate, I would say, certain works of certain levels in a secondary market. I think in the primary market, we saw like for the first time at Art Basel, they had 010, which was a new section that was all technology driven and it was all technologists that were, doing their art. I think it's become more of a value proposition in terms of galleries accepting it. It's taken years. I mean, there are organizations called iBeam and other organizations who've been supporting technologists that are in the art space and technology for years. But now we don't see such a separation in the way of like it still can emerge and the collaborations that also happen with traditional artists as well as technology artists. So I think the market is changing and with collectors, I think we have different levels of it. I think the Museum of Modern Art decided that they would acquire these technologists and these artists, and which has further validated that contemporary market area of it. And so what we'll progressively see is probably more of that. I will say traditional collectors often don't collect in that category, but technically sometimes they do because a video art is also considered a technology kind of component. You're using technology to play it or to show it or to hold it as an addition. So it's term technology, but like, where does that lie? A lot of people just think NFT. I'm like, not necessarily. And sometimes you'll have a digital certificate issued from a gallery that's for a traditional artwork. That's a digital certificate just to be able to know that, it exists and you purchased it. So there's different companies doing different things in that arena. And also with the, auctions as well.
So, for the STEM professionals listening, who feels they aren't creative. So, what's one practical, low stakes way they use suggest they start integrating art or creative thinking into their daily routine to boost their problem solving or well being?
I think, when you think about what creatives do, in their nature is always coming up with new pathways. So I think, using those tools that you have, you only think about things in like construct. And when you think of technology, you're building behind the scenes and you're building architecture and you're building different things to create something new or new and innovative. I think you can take a lot from artists in the way that their pathway thinking, as well as like kind of a stopping point for yourself. I mean, I see people like, Roland Bradstock, who is now just really been noted for his role in art in sports, for the Olympics, for instance, and how art and Olympic sport are coming from the same kind of construct of the same idea. The ethics are still there. So in terms of how it motivates you and how it helps you in your life. And he's really done a lot of work with the Olympic Games to kind of understand that art and sport, are of the same. They're going towards the same direction. So when you're thinking about building technology and you're, at work and you're doing these things and you're trying to find different pathways and you're kind of lost touch with like the personal component, I think art can also be a very good helpful tool. Or spending time with a creative person may make you think differently in how you're going to build something. They just have they have different pathways that use different parts of their brain. So it's a different way of thinking. But also just in your daily, I do believe, art is wellness. And I think if you're able to take time for that, if you don't have a practice to take time for yourself, it's a great practice. You can go to your local museum or just go spend some time with some art. You'll probably feel a little bit better afterwards, or you'll just have more debate for maybe you don't like the work and then it gives you conversation to have at home or with your family.
Okay, Rachel. So for you as a contributor to major publications like Vogue Italia, you have a front row seat to trends. So I'd like to ask, what's one emerging technology you're seeing artists and designers play with right now that you think will become mainstream in the next few years?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. Um, I do know that there's been a lot going on with, the hologram and the whole idea of like our hologram kind of technology that's coming out and how we can feel like we're sitting in the same room. We saw a lot of that at the Cannes Film Festival about a year ago. Companies were launching these kind of full rendering AI, renders of this, basically your avatar. I do think that's gonna come down the pike, no question. It's already you're seeing it within the fashion industry and you're also seeing it in galleries as well, but fashion runways and things like that. So I think people get more comfortable about a digital identity. I think you're gonna see more of this AI kind of avatar, three-dimensional human that's looks like you or might look like an avatar like you kind of more in conventional spaces. I think you'll see it more in like maybe when you walk into a store. I mean, we're already seeing it a little bit and you see it in foreign countries and certain places, but I feel like that technology will definitely I feel like people want to feel like they're more close to each other. And I know Google was working on theirs for a while. I don't know where they're at about it or if they're still going to launch it, but I feel like that technology is really interesting to watch. And obviously the AI tech, the AI space I could go on and on about and how that's integrating into different things that we see and how people approach things. I mean, it is affecting the film industry and the Hollywood industry because they're not, you can render, people not human, real people anymore. You can just completely have actors. And I've heard some of these AI studios that are building some of the commercials, they don't have to build the $1 million budget anymore. They can just issue the commercial. So we're going to see more of that, which knocks out a lot of creatives too. So is it good? Is it bad? I don't know, but I'm seeing that technology happen a lot more around also the marketing that's coming out of brands that we see. It's all AI render.
All right, Rachel. So your TV series explores art, fashion, technology. So I mean, when you're producing an episode, what does the collaboration between the creative director, the technologist, and the fashion designer actually look like behind the scenes? Is it chaotic or structured, or a bit of both?
It's been a bit of both. We've gone, I've done, I enjoy the, it's Your Home TV. Sean Stockwell runs a really great channel with great, people. And our TV channel really tries to give the message to say tech, fashion, and art can all kind of converge in the same environment. In terms of the fashion industry, in terms of like how technology's kind of been rendered and used, getting behind the scenes, you see that like a lot of the younger generation, not so the older generation, are using AI renders and using all different kinds of softwares to build their line now. And the other thing is, you don't have to create the item. You can render the item and it doesn't exist until somebody wants to buy it. So you see a lot of drops now that are happening. If you're in New York, I mean, people are lining up for drops, and you necessarily don't have the actual physical product with you. And people are buying into this digital space. You see it in the sneaker industry. You see the sneaker collectors that are at, the major auctions that are massively collecting sneakers. When there's drops, sometimes the sneaker doesn't exist. It's, AI rendered. So, I mean, it's fascinating. So with that, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but, the technology is becoming less like we notice it, like it's like, oh, of course, there's the shoe. I want it now. And you don't have to have it physically with you. And I mean, that's the kind of beauty in the fact that it's cutting costs in a lot of ways for fashion designers to be able to come up and not have to be sponsored by, large corporations. So they're able to render, issue an item, and then sell it and then create it, you know? So
Okay, so Rachel, in all your work, building bridges between art, fashion, and technology, what does the word innovation truly mean to you?
innovation is it's almost innovation for me is when someone is able or a group of people or, a collective is able to bring something forward that has not been shown before. You're innovating, you're taking from old and you're innovating for something to new. So
Hmm.
innovation for me is really something that, like, when you think about artists, some artists will say, my work isn't new. I'm innovating. I'm like coming off of somebody else that I learned from and I'm innovating off of that, and I'm creating my signature on top of it. So I do feel like there's always a passage of innovation. And I do think it's something new that an audience will never, has never encountered before. And I think it's such a fascinating process because you see it, in technology, but you also see it in artists. They're innovating something new and they're putting it out into the world. And so people don't often use that terminology in that category. They're like, oh, it's a creative idea and it's brand new. But a lot of times they're building off of the history of something else and building it into something new. So innovating to me is it's exciting, when you see somebody innovate something that just hasn't happened in the same way before. You might be connected to it somehow from something else, but it's like, how did you get there? So for me, that's really exciting. It's what I'm hoping that with InterExpert, we're able to kind of keep on the train of moving towards innovating new ideas for how artists can be seen and approached in ways and be viewed by more people than just like the normal gallery. So yeah.
All right, Rachel. So finally, for our listeners who are inspired to bring more creativity to into their lives or explore your work. So where is the best place for them to go to check out your social media, connect with you, follow you, learn more from you? Yeah, and all of that.
Well, you can find me at R Vancelette, RARVANCELETTE at Instagram. You can find us at Intro Expert, which is intro with not an E, with xpert.com. That's Intro Expert. We're also at Lookup, Times Square, without the two S's, just one S. So you can find recently our big project that happened on Thanksgiving Day. You'll find these beautiful videos that everybody did, which might just help you through the holidays. So you can go to www.lookup Times Square and find that. And yeah, and then you can, reach out on social media DM. We're also at InterExpert9, number 9 on Instagram, and you'll see a daily drop of a new video every day through January of some of our creative people speaking about what lookup means to them. So yeah, that's how you can find me.
Awesome, Rachel. It's been a really interesting and insightful conversation with you overall, and I am totally excited to have you on the show today.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me. I love your questions. I hope I covered what you wanted. And, I appreciate that you exist and I love your podcast. So I look forward to passing it on to all of our people too, to have them listen to all the things that you do on each podcast. So thank you.
Thank you very much.